Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Al from easymedicaldevice.com, and today we'll talk about Malaysia. So it's a country in the part of Asia that is really small, but it's a country that is really interesting. Had the chance once to be there, to go there and to make a training to the authorities there. And here today we'll talk mainly about how to register medical devices in Malaysia. And I have with me Adam Isaacs Rae. So Adam, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Hi, Manil. Nice to be here again. Talking about
Great.
Malaysia. It's quite a bit different. That's nice.
Yeah, and I think you know Malaysia very well also yourself.
Mm. Yeah. So my mum's Malaysian. So I've spent a lot of my life in Malaysia, kind of growing up there. So it's I'm extremely Scottish, but I'm also very Malaysian. So I'm constantly conflicted between the cultures. So
Can imagine, yeah.
yeah.
So today, yeah, let's try to dive in about how to register the products in Malaysia, but maybe a quick introduction of yourself.
Yeah, no problem. So, yes, my name's Adam Isaacs Rae. I am the kind of managing director, I suppose, of the Other Consultants, which is a very boutique kind of consultancy company that focuses all on medical devices in the quality and regulatory space. So, I kind of main thing I do is I'll prepare organizations for their technical documentation submissions, as well as I'll help them when they're being inspected. I'll help them do internal audits before being inspected, and ultimately, my kind of focus is really becoming in kind of global market clearance for medical devices as opposed to just kind of concentrating on, say, UK, which a lot of UK, EU, USA. I think there's everything that's been going on. There's a lot more. You're really starting to see a lot more people diversifying where they're placing the devices, which is hence why we're here discussing Malaysia.
Yeah. So
Mm.
we had a lot of episodes also on the podcast talking about different other countries like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia,
Yeah,
or any other country like Brazil also. I mean, many
yeah,
countries. Here we'll talk about Malaysia. So what is the catch here? What is really interesting here by talking about Malaysia? Why mainly the people that are listening to this, quality and regulatory
mm,
affairs people, have maybe to suggest Malaysia as one option for
yeah.
the registration of their devices.
Yeah, so twofold I'd say. So one is the I suppose the main commercial driver, which is an economic based element, which is that Malaysia is it's through, from just being Malaysian, it's very strategically located in terms of ports. It's very easy to get things to Malaysia, from that real logistical perspective. But the economic numbers as well, that I've got some here. So the projected revenue for medical device market in Malaysia is $3.39 billion for this year, apparently. In the last 8 years, there's been 76,000 devices registered in Malaysia, 21,000 establishment licenses, and it's kind of looking to grow by another billion dollars in the next 4 years. So it's a really kind of prospering economic area, Southeast Asia in general, but especially Malaysia. The other side is the regulatory element of it. Um, we'll get into this throughout the podcast, but the Medical Device Authority of Malaysia are very, I think there is a little bit of a perception of regulations in different parts of the world maybe aren't advanced, but the medical device regulations that have been put in place by the Medical Device Authority are, they are kind of they are advanced in that sense. They recognize approvals from other countries, which is where I think it would be really relevant for a lot of countries that if they have any of these recognized country approvals, then your route to getting your device on the market in Malaysia is much, much shorter. And we'll speak about that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, so mainly, yeah, Malaysia is a great opportunity here. I had also the chance to during the podcast to provide some updates on Malaysia regulation and sometimes comparing it with what we are doing in Europe. So
Yeah.
yeah, mainly let's try to talk about that. So
Mm.
in terms of regulatory requirements, so if we want to go to Malaysia, so are we really different? Is it really different from what we are doing here in Europe or in the US? So do we see really like some common things or no, it's completely the opposite?
Mm. It's I think you'll know this from being in the kind of consultancy game for a while. Nothing is really that different at the end of the day. So the Malaysia at the moment, they are part of the Association of Southeast Asian nations, which is essentially the EU, which is essentially, sorry, the Southeast Asian equivalent of the EU. They have the ASEAN medical device directive, which is very, 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 very close to the medical device directive that the EU has in place. That is then taken by the member states of Southeast Asia. So it's going to be, there's 10 of them. So we can provide the list, but there's, Brunei, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and a few others. They then apply that to national law. And the Malaysian Medical Device Act of 2012, 737, is enforced by the Medical Device Authority, but it's not essentially, it requires ISO 13485 for manufacturers. You require an authorized rep, an importer, and a distributor. So the post-market surveillance, technical documentation, it's all, if you're doing it elsewhere, you can do it in Malaysia, basically. It doesn't go, it's not, you're not going over and above what's in place elsewhere, essentially.
So yeah, we have Asian. So we talked about
Yeah.
that, the group. So here on all those countries, mainly, can you remind us something here? So in Europe, for example, when you register
Mm.
your device in Europe, you can sell everything everywhere in Europe. So it's not a
Yeah.
problem at all. Is it the same here with the Asian, or we have some differences
No.
here?
Unearth the pulse of the medtech world with MedTech Conf, a dynamic platform featuring global events on medical devices, biologicals, IVD, and pharmaceuticals. Stay informed, stay ahead, connect, share, and elevate your knowledge. Become an official sponsor. Make your event shine on the map. MedTech Conf, your key to the medtech universe. Remember, the future is now, and it's at your fingertips with MedTech Conf.
Yeah, so in theory, the directive is the same. They have a harmonized template for a technical document, so the common technical dossier template, which is the kind of they say everything needs to be on here. Individual countries still require their respective registration. So not like UDAMED. So I think this is maybe a good opportunity to kind of call out to the Malaysian Medical Device Authority and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations to say how much they would benefit from a single registration point would be a big change for that region. So no, but at the moment they can all apply the legislation. It needs to be national law, and then individual registrations are required. But the requirements are the same essentially, and then there's just little tweaks, basically like what we had in the EU
Okay.
before MDR and IVDR.
But the advantage, as you mentioned, is like you don't need to have 10 dossier or 10 different dossier with 10 different
Yeah,
requirements. So you can have one
correct.
and but you still have to register it in each country one by one. But
Yeah,
there is no differences, if I can say, in terms
yeah,
of the content of the dossier, which is an advantage
yeah.
also. So
That's it. Just the usual differences would just be around languages, kind
okay.
of, those really specific country requirements like languages, translations, and stuff like that, basically. But apart from that, everything should be the framework of everything is the same from the legislation.
So if I register in Malaysia, can I send everything in English, or is there a specific language there, or
Has
how
to
do you
be, it
consider that?
depends on what you're selling. So if it's for professional use, then there are, elements where you can have kind of like slightly different language requirements on it. Largely it has to contain Bahasa Malay, which is the national language of Malaysia. And English, because there is a very large English speaking, it's we go to Malaysia and everyone just speaks English to you. It's really, but Malay is the native language there.
Yeah, and just a precision for people that are listening. So we have also the same requirements in Europe, so that we have to have the
Mm.
national languages. Just
Yeah,
to precise that, this obligation of language is normal because mainly if you don't speak English, if you are in a country where you are speaking just Malay, for example, from Malaysia, and you don't speak English and you buy a product and you cannot read what is written on it, what it is doing for you, what are the cautious, the caution things or warnings, etc. it can be a problem for you. There can be a risk for you using that. So it's why it's normal that we have the local language for that. But yeah, as Mandy mentioned, so if for example it's for professional use, most likely those professionals are speaking English, so it should be fine.
Yeah.
But it's the same for Europe. In France, you have to
Yeah.
have it in French. In German, you have to have it in German, etc., etc. Because mainly
Yeah.
the people are not maybe it's not mandatory for them to speak English. So it's why it's important also.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, there's a specific document we can post in the show notes that goes through the language requirements. So it says, home use devices must have Bahasa Malay. Any other devices, can use English, and kind of specifies the use if they want to put other languages on there. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, we can pin that document for the audience.
Okay, so if now we want to, okay, now you convince everybody. You say we want to go to Malaysia. We want to
Yeah.
register our
Yeah.
products in Malaysia. So can you describe us maybe quickly a step-by-step process of
Yeah.
how people should consider now going to Malaysia? What are the steps that they have to go? And is there any really big difference to what we are doing, as I said, in Europe or US?
Yeah. So I think let's imagine most of these are non-local manufacturers, I think, just to scope which it makes things a bit easier. So the process is exactly the same. So, you need to go through your classification exercise. So is this a medical device in Malaysia? Does it meet those requirements? They have a conformity assessment document, which is called MDA GD 31, which we'll send to you. That's the first thing to do. The classification system that they use in Malaysia is the same as kind of what IMDRF and GHTF put out. So they use A to D, one being the lowest, D being the highest. That's the same with the entire ASEAN Medical Device Directive. So depending on what your classification is, obviously your conformity assessment then changes. If you are a class A, then you will benefit from what they call the simplified registration route, where you don't need any conformity assessment for that. So you can basically register with the platform that the Malaysian Device Authority have created, which is called Medcast. It's like Med C at and then ST.
Okay.
It looks a bit strange, but it's kind of just called I think it's pronounced Medcast. So Class A, you can register on Medcast. No need for conformity assessment. Get your clearance by the Medical Device Authority, and then all you need to start doing is appointing your authorized rep for you need to get that done in place basically first before that. Importers and distributors as relevant. Class B, C, and D devices all require the input of a conformity assessment body, so you would have to appoint one. I have all of the details, the kind of list of all the conformity assessment bodies for Malaysia that we can provide to people as well, so they can have a look if you want to select some or avoid some. The list is there.
Okay.
Um, you know what I'm saying? So then from there, that's the kind of initial part. They all require, same as the EU, that authorized representative. If you're not there, you need that person in Malaysia that needs to be, registered there, legal entity registered in Malaysia. The authorized representative is a really key point for the Malaysia registration, because they will be your point of contact. The roles and responsibilities are essentially exactly the same as what we have in the EU. They will be your legal contact. They will handle your registrations. They have post-market obligations, so they need to make sure kind of any reports coming back are fed back to the manufacturer, just very, very similar. So that's the initial first step that needs to be done. Classification, understand your conformity assessment route. So not too different
Okay.
to what we're used to in the EU.
And then?
And then um, the kind of beauty of what I think a lot of people will realize with Malaysia is they have this recognized country status. So when you're looking into your classification, class A, B, C, D, the first thing also I would recommend people to do is saying, okay, do we have a registration elsewhere that we can leverage? In Malaysia recognizes a few, so they call them recognized countries. So USA, Canada, Australia, Japan, EU, essentially. So the kind of the MD stamp, essentially, apart from Brazil. So what that means is if you have a device that's cleared on those markets or a QMS certificate that's been issued there, then you can send that to Malaysia and you will benefit from what's called they call it a simplified conformity assessment, which just means that they will conduct what Malaysian authorities call verification.
Okay.
Um, Another really good document for this we'll pin here, which goes through all of the details of verification. It is essentially that they will look at your QMS certificate and they'll say, okay, this is from this notified body that's listed in the NANDO database, so we recognize that that's okay. And then they'll go through, a very light touch assessment of your technical documentation, to make sure the intended use that is in there is the same as the intended use you're putting forward for the same device. They'll have a look at, a list of requirements such as has there been any incidents with this device in the last year? Has it been placed on the market for more than a year, for example? They have these kind of requirements. It is a much more simplified route of assessment, rather than having to go from scratch. Because if you didn't have a recognized country status, you're having a full QMS audit essentially against ISO 13485. You have to have your PMS system specific to Malaysian requirements, which is again not too different, but it's just a bit more. Your technical documentation would need to be in the format of the common the CSDT template. So that's the template they refer to. And then, they would have to do that full scale verification essentially of that. So there is a massive benefit if you have a device on the market elsewhere, to getting it on the market in Malaysia. You can really benefit from that simplified verification process.
Again, who is doing this verification? Is it the conformity assessment body or is it the
Yeah,
authority or?
and a conformity assessment body
Okay,
would
so
be
you
doing it.
have, so if you have, for example, a product located in Europe, you have your notified body in Europe.
Mhm.
So it's not sufficient. You have still to go through a conformity assessment body that will
Yeah,
again review all what was done in Europe
yeah.
for then assessing. And as you said, it's a light check. It's not like a major burden, if I can say normally for that.
Yeah, yeah. It's supposed to be light touch, So there's a checklist again we can post, which will be really helpful. They've got a lot of guidance documents, the Malaysian authorities. It's really like there's maybe a bit too much, if anything. There's like so many. But yeah, it's a light touch, where they try and say, okay, this device is on the market in other regions. Is it the same device that's coming to Malaysia? Is there anything that's happened in these other regions that we can foresee that may pose a risk to this device further being placed on the Malaysian market, essentially? So, because if you don't have that, like we said, it's full scale 1345 audit, and you're going through the full, essentially just a full conformity assessment process similar to what we have in the EU, with the notified bodies.
And if I want then to register in Malaysia, should I do it by myself or is it my authorized representative who will be taking the full responsibility for doing that?
Yeah, so it would be your authorized representative is the kind of they will become the face, to the authorities. So it's really important you have a good one. Really important you trust them. Because there's going to be a lot of IP handled here, in terms of they will have to hold your technical documentation. They will know about any complaints that occur. The authority will go to any changes that happen to your device. They will know about it because you're going to have to make any updates to the conformity assessment body. So authorized representative will do your registration. They will maintain it. Your registration lasts 5 years, when it's granted. So when you pass that audit or that verification, the conformity assessment body will recommend you for registration. So they'll give you an audit report and they'll say, yep, I've assessed this device and they're using a recognized status from this country or they're not. And then say everything's cool. And then that will get passed you essentially attach that report to your application to the Malaysian Medical Device Authority to say, we've received this recommendation for registration, pay your application fee, which we can cite down below in the notes. And then you're on your way to then being able to get the devices on the market in Malaysia, and you need to work on getting an import on next, essentially.
Yeah, and so you have the same process then in Europe or UK or wherever. So mainly you have the authorized representative, and you have then the distributor or importer of the products that will
Yeah.
be also appointed here, so that they
Yeah.
can then take care of the products that are coming to you. So can the authorized representative also play the role of the importer or distributor, or it's not
Yeah,
possible?
they can. Yeah. So, there's nothing from what I've seen from that MGCD document which kind of specifies they cannot be the same. It seems like they can be the same, but it does conflict with the idea of the economic operator system when all of these roles can be the same. Um, I would strongly advise against a manufacturer appointing one entity to be their authorized rep, their importer, and the distributor. From the perspective of each level is supposed to do verification
Yeah.
to ensure regulatory compliance with that device. But also from an IP perspective, it creates a lot of risks for that manufacturer because if you are sharing all of that stuff with one entity, you shouldn't have to really share all of your technical documentation with your importer. That's
Yeah,
not,
true.
it's not that normal. So it does, from my perspective, I know a lot of organizations, you probably have this when people want you to take a look at your technical document, people become very like, oh,
Yeah,
because it
yeah,
does
yeah.
contain
I have that.
really really sensitive stuff. So I would always advise separating them. Get your authorized rep who's good at being an authorized rep, get your importer who's good at being an importer, and get your distributor if you need to, to further place that on the market in Malaysia
So
and make it available.
now in terms of registration, can we be more precise, mainly also about prices? So is it
Yeah.
expensive to register,
So
or it's something that is how much it costs to register?
yeah,
Because mainly
yeah,
we know, for example, for Europe, just the hiring of notified body can already move up the budget. Going to the
yeah.
US, if it's a 510K or a PMA or things that can also change
Mhm.
the level. So what is the
Yeah.
range of here? Is it affordable to register or not?
Yeah, so the within there's kind of they break it into a few different ways. They have application, so you have an application fee, of course. Then you have a registration fee, which are fees just for the competent authority. So they are not considered this is not considering your conformity assessment fees. Those fees for conformity assessment are limited by time. The obviously each conformity assessment body has its own amount of time for what it says, but in the guidance documents, they for verification they say this will take 4 hours. They kind of specify how long each part should take. But the conformity assessment bodies, unless you go to them and ask for some quotations, you're not, we can't really say this is how much that costs. But for the applications, for the device with the competent authority, for a class A, it's 100 ringgit. So 100 ringgit is around £25, basically.
Okay.
It's around
Wow.
£4 to £5 for just for the application fee.
Okay.
And then for a class B, 250 ringgit, class C, 500 ringgit, class D, 750. And then if the device contains a medicinal product, 750 ringgit. Then your registration fee, so they've reviewed your application that you've paid 100 ringgits for, and then your registration when it's done. For a class A device, there's no fee. The registration fee for a Class B is 1,000, for Class C 2,000, Class D 3,000 ringgit, and then if it contains a medicinal product, 5,000 ringgit for your registration fee. So the registration fees with the competent authority are really competitive, I would say, and I think you would probably agree as well.
Yeah.
The kind of grey area, which I will endeavour to get some more information on for some of the viewers, will be those conformity assessment fees because no one is really transparent with the
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the pricing
I
of
mean,
them. So
it's a private company, so you can
yeah,
decide
that's it.
to move up or
That's
move
it.
down as they want.
Yeah,
But no, I think it's really great. I mean, yeah, it's so if you are already coming from Europe, the barrier of entry is low because they are doing a light check. The price is
yeah,
low because mainly apparently, yeah, you have to also get a conformity assessment body and the authority to pay, but it's really cheap
yeah,
also. I mean, it's why
yeah,
are we not going there then? It's
yeah,
more
yeah, yeah,
other
yeah,
question. In terms of products, so in Europe, for example, when we go to the market, it's not ending there. So you have a review by the notified body every year. You have a post-marketing surveillance to do, clinical evaluation, etc. I mean, to register maybe or to contact again the authorities for some things. So, is there any
Mhm.
post-marketing activity also for Malaysia, or no? You just sell. You start. You as soon as you get the license, then you are free to sell for a certain number of years without any
So
reporting. Hey, just a second. Do you need a EU, Swiss or UK representative? Then choose Easy Medical Device. We can represent you and also become your importer. Contact us at eo@easymedicaldevice.com.
yeah, so you will get your license from them, and then you will be registered with the authorities. So your registration, because the way they do it is kind of is slightly it's kind of there's two sides. So there's your certificate with it depends on what we're doing, if we're doing recognized or not. But let's say if you're recognized, your registration will be valid for 5 years, and then they will do kind of checks periodic checks to say, has there been any changes to this?
Okay.
And then if not, if you've kind of went through the route of just doing conformity assessment, with no recognized country status, then from there, then that's when you're in a very traditional kind of conformity assessment process where you will have surveillance and you will have kind of that ongoing recertification cycle to 1345 basically, in the same way, because the base of it is ISO 1345 for a quality system, unless you're a class A manufacturer, which you then don't really need. You're not having conformity assessment done.
Okay, and
Mhm.
so for those assessment again, ISO 13485 or
Mhm.
so can I come directly to Malaysia with my own ISO, or it should be provided by the conformity assessment body? Because in Europe, it's a notified body who should provide also the ISO 13485, and
Yeah,
you cannot just separate this with the MDR. So
yeah,
mainly, is it the same there, or you
yeah.
can come with your own ISO and you can just make a separate assessment by the conformity assessment body?
You can take your own ISO. So if you have the ISO 13485 certificate again from one of those recognized countries, then they will evaluate it and say, okay, does this match? Is this from a recognized country that we perceive as reputable? Um, and they will conduct that assessment against that, and then they will take that into account for that verification process, for when they're doing that kind of lighter touch assessment on your device. So yeah, you can use 1345 from a completely different region, providing it's within one of those ones that we mentioned, if you are looking to kind of leverage that simplified registration route.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so in terms of maybe your experience now with those type of registration coming from Europe or wherever outside of Malaysia, so uh, do you have you noticed some kind of mistakes that people are always doing, or some misconception or misunderstanding that
Mhm.
maybe we can, yeah, if I can say, disclose here so that it helps
Yeah.
those people to avoid those mistakes? So do you have like some issues that you always see?
Yeah, yeah. So I think the first one is the main one I think is a lot of people, but because there is so much guidance documents in Malaysia, and they're
Okay.
all PDF documents. I think a lot of people become a little bit overwhelmed by like what's going on, because that is so much coming out. That is the main thing to me, that a lot of people kind of become like a bit like, oh, and the requirement for a conformity assessment body is that first bit where people look at, and some of the guidance is not extremely clear, and some of it is, kind of thing. So I'd say the first thing with everyone is, what in part of the show notes we'll put this together, is I want to make it clearer for people to understand what they need to be doing with the guidance to get into Malaysia, because if you just go and start reading all the guidance, there's stuff everywhere, So it's kind of a real case of taking that time trying to understand it. But the first thing is really, we can benefit from this recognized country status. And that is the first thing. I think a lot of people don't realize this at the moment, with Malaysia. They also just March there were accepted as a member to the IMDRF
Yeah.
Malaysia. which is a massive step for them. So I'd say that's the main thing. And then the second element is really around that authorized representative appointment.
Okay.
Um, it's kind of, not using all the same people, or not using an authorized representative in the same way of which we do in the EU, for example, or the UK. An authorized representative should be a very strategic partner in your medical device kind of journey to getting that towards the patient. And from what I've seen with a few registrations in Malaysia, there's not that much thought put into who you're going to pick for this. They should be very reputable. They need to be assessed by the conformity assessment body as well. Which is very unlike Europe, like you get
Yeah.
inspected, but in Malaysia, you essentially need a license to be an authorized representative. So, I would verify that as well, that you're confident with who it is that you're going to start doing business with.
Sure.
Mm.
Okay. Any final thoughts, maybe, or something that maybe you want the audience to know before we are closing here?
Yeah, I'd just say that it's Malaysia in general. We spend so much time talking around the UK, EU,
Yeah, yeah.
US. It's nice to change it up a little bit with Malaysia. These in Southeast Asia in particular, there is a lot going on. With these countries trying to become more of a player in the kind of the global medical device regulations. I think Malaysia, like I said, with the IMDRF membership is massive. That's a huge thing for Malaysia. And I think with that, it's a territory it's not worth looking past, because it's quite easy to forget, like Malaysia and that little bit of Southeast Asia. It seems quite small, but the populations are relatively high,
Yeah,
and within that region. So therefore, the requirement for medical devices will be high. Like we said, in the last 8 years, kind of 76,000 in Malaysia alone registered. So we can, there is a miniature kind of past EU there, which is what happened with, the medical device directive in the national states. And that is, if you wanted to take advantage of the EU doing it, then it makes sense to try and do it in Asia, because you do it for Malaysia, you've got a simplified route for, everywhere else in the ASEAN that's under that directive. So it just seems to be one of these things that global regulatory strategy, spinning up a new device, take it into account, get that recognized status if you've got it elsewhere. You've done the hard work for America, EU, you know, get it on the market in Malaysia, and you benefit from it.
exactly.
Kind of
And
huge opportunity.
we see a lot more also guidance is coming from those countries. Also
Yeah.
Singapore, we are also talking about that
Yeah.
sometime. Other countries that are in the Asian area. So yeah, it's why maybe it's worth looking at these countries as also an opportunity to grow also your business and to
Yeah.
go there. And as said, as we have also this common submission with the Asian
Mm.
group, so mainly this is also a possibility for you to then expand to other countries that are just close to it. So it's not like you are going too far. You can go also
Yeah.
close to it. So which can be like also an opportunity there. Okay, so
Yeah.
great. So how can you help the audience then here?
Yeah, so I can help the kind of audience with doing, I suppose first I love to get involved right at the beginning before there's even a medical device, but it's not always like that. So I can really help the audience in terms of understanding those registration requirements, appointing an authorized representative, helping the registration along, in terms of making sure everything's in place, making sure that before you put forward your recognized country status, that everything is aligned, because it's not just going to go into a void and then get a big tick against it. It will still be assessed, even though it's a simplified verification route, it still will be subject to assessment. So I kind of, with Malaysia, I would really take part in preparing that and making sure that's ready to go for inspection. Any assessments by the cab as well, I would participate in, and then working with the authorized representative to kind of make sure that device is on the market, and then dealing with any post-market obligations or issues as well. So that's kind of where I'm coming in with that, and then it's kind of we're covering all of Southeast Asia as well, as part of it. Um, Yeah, and that's pretty much it.
Great. No, I think it's great. So if you need any help to register in Malaysia, so don't hesitate to contact Adam. So we'll put anyway all your contact details on the show notes so that you can go there.
Great.
And yeah, you send me all those links that we talk about, and we'll put that on the show notes, and then people can just go there and check everything there. Okay, then Adam, it was really a pleasure. Thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day.
You too, Neil. Merci. Thank you. Take care.